Well, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you seen prices go down for anything? 99 times out of 100, a business ain't lowering their prices. 99 times out of 100, the business is going to cut expenses by getting rid of you, laying you off, because the business wants to stay in business. And the way they stay in business is cutting expenses. And what's the biggest expense for most businesses? Payroll. Who's on the payroll? You and me. A lot of times what happens is we get these skills and these jobs and we don't realize, we sit there because we're real comfortable. We don't realize that this job pays me $50,000 a year, but the skill set that I've developed is really worth $70,000 a year. But I've never went to explore because I've gotten comfortable. And so be careful about that, right? Guys, in my opinion, most people are just not ready for what's coming next. And what's next is jobs. So I want to explain some things to you on this video that will help you sort of prepare for what's coming next and get yourself ready for the potential of layoffs, more layoffs in many industries. So first I want to talk to you about what's going on, and then I want to talk to you about what you can do right now to get yourself prepared so you don't see yourself on the outside looking in. Now, the first thing you got to know is that we just had a GDP report that came out a couple days ago. The US economy is shrinking. Now, is it shrinking super duper fast and you should be in a panic? No, I'm not telling you that. But it is shrinking. You got to know this because it's the key to what's coming next. Now, the GDP is the gross domestic product. I'm going to try to break this down to you in language that's easy to understand, right? The GDP is just gross domestic product. Now, what that means is it's the total monetary value of all the goods and services sold in a given time frame for a particular country. Now, why does this matter and what does this have to do with jobs? Now, before I go there, let me say this. The government measures GDP every quarter. So that's 4 times a year that we get this GDP report to give us sort of an indication or a measure of how well the economy's doing. If the economy is growing, shrinking, whatever. So at the end of April, we just got the GDP report for the first quarter of this year. So January, February, March, the report comes out in April, and it's an initial report. So in May, we're going to get the second report of the first quarter GDP. And that second report is going to be revised, usually up or down just a little bit because the numbers keep rolling in. And in June, we're going to get the third and final report for the first quarter GDP of this year. So there's 3 reports to come out for every quarter of GDP. We just got the first report for the first quarter of this year. And the reason that's significant is because it's the first GDP report since President Trump has been in office. And here's what it revealed. What it revealed is this. The GDP has dropped, has sort of shrunk, has went down. And when the GDP is down, that's very, very significant. It's an indicator. Now, let me say this. The GDP is not negative. It's just down from what it previously was. Now, a negative GDP is a problem. When you get 2 straight quarters of a negative GDP, that's the textbook version of what a recession is. Now, we're not in a recession, so I don't want to alarm you like that, right? I'm not here to scare you. I'm just here to prepare you. You got to remember, though, all the numbers that they shoot us about the GDP, the unemployment, you name it, inflation, all these numbers, they are looking backwards, right? They're not looking right now in real time, and they're not looking forward. These numbers are all numbers of stuff that occurred several months ago, right? And you also got to think about the fact that all the numbers that they typically shoot us, they never want to get us too riled up and too upset. So yeah, CNN or somebody might, or Fox News or whoever, Bloomberg News, they can report a negative number or something, but they're never going to give you the real picture, because if they give you the real picture, it's going to affect us as consumers. And guess what? We as consumers and businesses, we actually drive this whole engine. We drive this whole matrix that we're in, because if we don't spend and businesses don't spend, things are going to get really bad really soon. You saw what happened 4 years ago or so during the pandemic. As soon as they thought everybody wasn't spending, they was ready to hand each one of us a $2,000 and $3,000 check just to get us out there to spend. So that tells you how important we are as consumers. It tells you how important we are as businesses and people that actually buy stuff. We got to keep buying stuff. So they can't give us super duper terrible news on a regular basis, because it will affect the way we spend money. It will affect our sentiment, what they call consumer sentiment. And when that gets changed and we all of a sudden get down, we ain't buying stuff. Remember, as consumers and businesses, we are the engine that makes this whole thing go. So they always tell you something to sound real, but guess what? They ain't gonna give you the exact full truth, because if they do that, things may seem a lot bleaker than we think they are. Now, a down GDP is important because when America's production goes down, so does the creation of new jobs. So does the creation of new places of employment, new places to work. And guess what? When new places of work goes down and the unemployment rate goes up, then spending goes down, right? When you get layoffs, you can't go out and buy stuff and spend money like you did before. And if you get too many of those layoffs, it's going to have an ultimate effect on the economy because that engine called a consumer ain't going to be there. Now, you got these businesses that are trying to predict the future all the time. That's what a business does. They try to forecast and look out forward and see what's going on down the road so they can make decisions today based on the future, right? Businesses are trying to anticipate what's coming. So those businesses, when they look and see what's coming down the road and it doesn't look good down the road, guess what? That's going to affect us as workers because the businesses are going to say, hey, we can do a few things. One thing we can do is drop prices. The other thing we can do is start laying off people and cutting our expenses because we got too big of a payroll. Well, let me ask you a question. When's the last time you've seen prices go down for anything? 99 times out of 100, a business ain't lowering their prices. 99 times out of 100, the business is going to cut expenses by getting rid of you, laying you off, because the business wants to stay in business. And the way they stay in business is cutting expenses. And what's the biggest expense for most businesses? Payroll. Who's on the payroll? You and me, right? So specifically, the GDP showed a contraction or decrease of about 0.3% in the first quarter of this year. And the GDP was down from the 2.4% growth that it seen the previous quarter. Now, that was the first decline of the GDP in about 3 years, since around 2022. So that's 3 straight years of a growing GDP that has now changed. Now, this is the first time we see it change, but I suspect that as we go into the next several months, we're going to see GDP continuing to decrease and get lower and lower. Remember now, the President Trump's Liberation Day of tariffs, I think it was back on April 2nd or something. This GDP data is before the announcement of tariffs. Okay, so the GDP data that we're with, again, it's looking backwards, is before the tariffs. So if the GDP is down before the tariffs, what do you think is going to happen to the GDP in the next quarter, right? After some of these tariffs have sort of been in place for a while. So you need to keep that in mind as a consumer. Remember, they don't always just tell you, hey, this information we got, now that's looking backwards, guys. You remember, that's not real-time data. They don't really say that when they announce what the unemployment rate is or what the GDP is or what the inflation rate is. You always got to know that there's some lag time. So whatever's going on in the first quarter of this year is going to have a trickle-down effect in the second, third, and fourth quarter of the year. Now, here's the other thing. By the time this video comes out, the latest labor report will already be out, and they're projecting that we're going to see about 130,000 or so non-farm jobs created last month. That's after last month we saw 228,000 new jobs, non-farm jobs created in the previous month. So now you have new jobs lower as well. New jobs that are created, that's gone down as well. GDP decreasing, new jobs decreasing, right? Now the unemployment rate is expected to still be around 4.1, 4.2%, which is fairly good, right? That's a pretty low unemployment rate in the big scheme of things. But again, this is looking backwards. This is not looking forward. This is not real-time data. Now remember, I'm going to be giving you some things that you should be doing right now. As an employee or a worker in America, there's some specific things that you have to do. So stay tuned. I'm going to give you those things. Now, I also want to say that consumer spending has gone up. Now, you may be saying, well, why would consumer spending go up? Wow, what's going on? A lot of consumer spending going up that we see happening right now is because of the consumers and businesses sort of since the beginning of the year, December, January of this year, starting to kind of stock up on what they need, right? Getting more of this and more of that. When President Trump was first elected, you had a lot of people and businesses saying, oh my gosh, I got to go ahead and stock up on food. I got to stock up on big ticket items. I got to stock up on, if I'm selling, hats or something. If I'm selling hats, I got to stock up on my inventory coming from overseas because look, starting in January, he started threatening tariffs, right? So starting in January, we saw a lot of people start buying more stuff to have more stuff before tariffs started kicking in on this Liberation Day on April 2nd, right? So people and businesses were sort of trying to stock up. And I think that's part of the reason why we see consumer spending being up. And you may be saying, well, that's not looking backwards. Well, the threat of tariffs have been around since the beginning of the year, right? Consumer spending is also one of those misleading statistics that make it seem like all is well, everything's great, everybody's spending money, no big deal. But not really, right? What's the reason people are out spending more money? If you've been stocking up on anything, let me know in the comments below. What have you been stocking up on and why? So in my opinion, more people are stocking up and buying stuff and more businesses are buying stuff, but I think a lot of that is based on fear and uncertainty about what's going to happen. Here's what I'm seeing. You tell me if you're seeing this. Walgreens laying people off. CVS laying people off. Wells Fargo, FedEx laying people off. UPS just said a few days back that they're laying off 20,000 workers, not to mention all the tech folks that are getting laid off. If you know somebody that's laid off, drop a comment below and let me know that you've seen some folks being laid off as well. Not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people that work for the federal government that have been let go, right? That's a whole group of people that many of them are hitting the workforce as well, looking for jobs, right? Now, again, I'm not telling you to be scared or alarmed. I'm just telling you to be prepared. So let me give you some things that's going to help you be prepared as an employee out here in America, because you need to anticipate layoffs and issues and problems. And here's how you do it. First, you got to be looking for the warning signs, all right? Looking for the signs of layoffs, looking for the signs of budget cuts, looking for the signs of reduced hours at your job, or no longer giving that overtime, right? Or cutting people down to part-time instead of full-time, right? Or you see some significant, managerial changes, some top-level managers leaving and you're wondering why they're leaving, right? And then document. If you have your performance plans and they've all been good, make sure you get copies of that stuff, right? You take it with you. So you always have a copy of how you performed on your job. Not to mention in your personal financial life, your budgeting, you can cut down some of those things that aren't some of the essentials, that aren't some of the needs, right? Maybe cut back on some of your wants, right? The things that you really don't need, but you kind of want them. Maybe you can slash those things a little bit. And also, you want to also make sure you have some cash, some emergency funds that will carry you over in case, you get laid off and you can't find a job, right? You got to have 6 months of your living expenses that are sitting there that you can use in the meantime, because I tell you what, unemployment don't cut it. That ain't number $200, $250 a week, maybe $1,000 a month in most states in America. So a little bit of unemployment check ain't gonna do it. You got to have some of your own money and avoid some of the large purchases, avoid some of the debt or bad debt. Now's not the time to go out and buy the brand new car with a 5-year. There's never a good time for that, but especially now, getting a loan on something. You don't want to do that. Avoid that debt, keep you some cash, pay attention to what's going on at your job. Don't just go to work, come home, go to work. Know what's taking place in the background so you're not totally shocked when you walk in your door one day and they say, we're laying you off. And optimize your things like your online profiles, your LinkedIn profile. Like, get that thing together. Go on LinkedIn, check it out, because a lot of people get hired off LinkedIn, off their LinkedIn profiles. When you go to a job, a lot of times a recruiter is going to look and see if you're on LinkedIn and see what your background is, right? And how you presented your skills on a site like LinkedIn. And sometimes they'll be on Facebook as well, just a heads up to you. But also gather your reference letters, right? If you have somebody that's supposed to give you a reference, make sure you get that reference letter from them and keep all of your relationships intact. On your way out the door, I always say grease the skids, because you never know. You may get laid off today, but maybe they want to rehire you in 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road. Or maybe you need this job as a reference for the next job or another job 6 months from now. So always leave on good terms, right? Give them a notice and all that good stuff. Or if they're going to lay you off, make sure you don't, go off on the day you're supposed to leave the office and knock everything off the desk, right? You don't want to do that. And then, of course, another thing you can do is just start job hunting. A good thing to do is to keep that resume updated, right? With your latest skills, your latest certifications, right? Have that resume updated on a regular basis. And every 6 months, test the waters. Every 6 months, go out there and see, Is there another particular job or place of employment that is going to increase the amount that they pay me and maybe even be a better fit for me, a better situation for me, right? In terms of management or in terms of work hours or location, whatever it could be. But you got to be exploring your options, I say every 6 months or so, because a lot of times what happens is we get these skills in these jobs and we don't realize, we sit there because we're real comfortable. We don't realize that this job pays me $50,000 a year, but the skill set that I've developed is really worth $70,000 a year. But I've never went to explore because I've gotten comfortable. And so be careful about that, right? Jobs are going to lay you off when they got to lay you off. So you don't have to sit there and just wait around. You can go out and do a little job searching, updating your resume, checking to see what's out there, shopping your skills around too. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing immoral about that, right? And then of course, let all your contacts who you trust know what you're doing, because they might have an avenue or access to work somewhere else. And review whatever, if you're on a contract or you have some type of union agreement, make sure you review that and read that so you know what your rights are, right? In terms of being laid off. And you want to learn about severance packages, what you should do with your 401k or your 403b, COBRA or healthcare, right? All these different things that happen when you separate from a job that a lot of times we don't think about when we're 19, 20, 21. But when we get 35, 40 years old, and we got a family and you got to think about some of these things a little bit deeper and up your skills, right? If there's a certain certification that you think you ought to get, go ahead and get it. If the job that you're currently on is going to pay for you to get whatever, go ahead and get it, right? If there's some level of skill that you need to acquire and add to your repertoire or add to your resume, why not take some time out right now to get it so that you can make sure you maintain your value in the open market if you have to go look for another job, or you at least have new skills when you go looking for another job. And most of all, let me say this, most of all, the most important thing you can do, because we know jobs are coming next when it comes to layoffs and unemployment and all that stuff, right? One of the most important things you can do is maintain your mental health. Look, guys, if you're going to sit in front of CNN, Fox News, Bloomberg News, read USA Today every day, you're going to go crazy. Everybody I know that sits around in front of the TV all day, every day, watching CNN or whatever news station, you pick it, watching that stuff all day, every day, everybody I know is angry, they're mad, they're upset, they're delusional, they're stressed out, their anxiety level is on 10, and they are just overly immersed in these talking points that they've subconsciously picked up from whatever station they've been watching on the big screen all day, right? You cannot watch and listen to and read bad news all day and have a positive, optimistic outlook in life. It just don't happen. So in my opinion, get away from that. Turn the TV off, right? Watch some cartoons, watch an old TV comedy sitcom, watch something different. Watch a movie, watch an old Western movie or something. But you got to get out of this because you got to protect your mentality, your mental. It's very important during these times. Look, layoffs are coming. We just got to prepare, and you really can't get around it, to be honest with you. Now, perhaps at some point down the road, these tariffs that are bound to happen in a certain way, they've sort of been put off for now, but they are still here in terms of automotive, in terms of China and so forth. And so these tariffs down the road, they may offer more manufacturing jobs in America. Of course, you got to do something about labor in America, right? Because that's one of the reasons that a lot of these jobs and all this stuff comes into America, imported, because they can be produced cheaper in another country. And so you have to address that as well if you plan on bringing all of these jobs back to America. Perhaps sometime down the road, 3, 4, 5 years, that will happen. I don't know, right? But the fact is, there's going to be some pain. This is just the beginning. And most people just really are not ready for what's coming. And it's jobs. Jobs are next. Everything trickles downhill, right? So everything we've been seeing so far is going to trickle down. At the bottom of that hill is you and me, the employees. We're at the bottom of that hill, and we're going to be left to figure out what to do. Yes, tariffs are going to raise prices. Yes, we're going to see some supply chains disrupted like we did back during the pandemic. But remember, we are the engine of this economy. We are who makes it go. We are the ones who make this thing happen, right? As consumers, right? As consumers, I think our spending accounts for 2/3 of the economic activity. That's just consumers, not businesses, consumers. So We are the economic engine of America, right? The U.S. labor market. So we're important, right? But we got to be informed. We got to be informed consumers, informed employees. So, hey, there you have it. Most people are not ready for what's coming. Don't be most people. Be prepared. Jobs are next. What are you going to do about it to get ready? Hey, if you got value from this video, smash that like button below, share it with your network of people, and more than anything, drop me a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Do you know anybody who's experienced layoffs? Let me know in the comments below. Hey, the best person who's going to take care of that old you is the young you that is prepared today. Take good care of yourself and take care of other people. Until the next video, peace.